In the flickering candlelight of the French court, whispers moved faster than kings could speak. A young Italian girl arrived, barely 14, with nothing but her wits, her family name, and an uncertain heart. They called her a queen, but the crown she wore was heavier than gold. It was threaded with secrets, fear, and power that could destroy or protect. Every step she took, every smile she offered, carried consequences that rippled through an entire kingdom. Who was Catherine de' Medici, and how could one woman survive in a world where trust was deadly and love could be treacherous? From forbidden alliances to whispered plots, from devotion to her children to the shadows of scandal, her story is one of survival, cunning, and the human heart's struggle against impossible odds. This is the tale of the scandalous poison queen of France, a woman whose choices would shape history, and whose legend would endure for centuries. The moment she stepped off the carriage into the grandeur of the French court, Catherine felt both awe and terror. She was only 14, yet already married to Henry, the second son of the King of France. The splendor was breathtaking, tapestries embroidered with gold thread, ceilings so high they seemed to brush the sky, and courtiers in silks and jewels moving like living jewels themselves. But behind the beauty lay a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. France was not just a kingdom of kings and queens, it was a realm divided by faith, suspicion, and ambition. Catherine, the young Italian bride, was suddenly at the center of it all. Her early days at court were a lesson in patience and observation. Every smile could conceal malice, every gift could hide a dagger. She learned to measure her words, to read the expressions of those who laughed in her presence yet might conspire against her in secret. She became adept at silences, at the subtle art of appearing harmless while noting everything, the changing alliances, the feuds, the subtle shift of power between Catholics and Huguenots. Even at her age, Catherine realized that survival would require intelligence, courage, and a touch of cunning. As her husband grew into his role as king, Catherine's influence quietly grew as well. While Henry pursued pleasure and indulgence, she studied the machinery of government, the delicate balance of power, and the volatile hearts of her subjects. She was fascinated by the intricacies of diplomacy, yet she also felt the weight of her position. Each decision, each action could bring life or death to those around her. Stories of mysterious deaths and sudden poisonings whispered through the court like the wind through autumn leaves. It was a world where food and drink could betray you, where loyalty was fleeting, and trust was a dangerous luxury. Catherine's own family history was no stranger to cunning and survival. The Medici were a family that understood power intimately, its seductive allure and treacherous consequences. She carried their lessons like a secret compass, guiding her through treacherous waters. She learned that strength was not always in force, it was in foresight, in the ability to bend without breaking, to endure insults without faltering, and to act with patience when anger would have been easier. Yet even as she adapted, she remained human, vulnerable to fear, doubt, and longing. Her children were her constant preoccupation, a tether to humanity in a court often stripped of compassion. She knew that their survival depended on more than love, it depended on her ability to maneuver the dangers that lurked in every corridor, every shadow, every whispered conversation. Each child was a future king or queen, a pawn and yet a potential architect of history. Catherine's devotion to her family was fierce, yet it was tempered by the harsh knowledge that in the world she inhabited, affection could be exploited, and weakness could be fatal. By the time the religious tensions reached their peak, Catherine had transformed from a timid foreign bride into a queen whose intelligence and subtlety were respected, feared, and, in some cases, despised. She orchestrated marriages, negotiated truces, and, yes, made choices that history would remember with fascination and horror. She became known as the Poison Queen, not merely for rumors of clandestine plots but for the extraordinary lengths she would go to protect her children and her throne. In a world governed by treachery, survival often required acts that defied morality yet preserved life. But Catherine's story is not one of cruelty alone. It is the story of a woman navigating impossible circumstances, balancing ambition with duty, fear with strategy, and love with necessity. She was flawed, brilliant, and undeniably human, a queen shaped by her environment, by her choices, and by the inexorable march of history. As the years unfolded, she would face betrayals that tested every fiber of her being, victories that brought temporary peace, and losses that left scars deeper than any physical wound could inflict. The years passed, and Catherine's presence at court grew stronger, yet the world around her became increasingly turbulent. France was a land divided by faith, and the fragile threads of peace frayed with every passing month. The Huguenots, Protestants who sought reform, clashed repeatedly with Catholics loyal to the crown, and Catherine, ever the diplomat, found herself in the center of this storm. Each day brought a new challenge, a noble plotting rebellion, a faction vying for influence, or a whisper that could topple a family. In this chaos, her intelligence and patience became her most valuable tools. Catherine understood that brute force alone could not secure her children's future. She employed subtlety, cultivating alliances, and negotiating marriages that would strengthen her family's position. Her palace, once a place of youthful wonder, became a nerve center of strategy and careful observation. She watched, she listened, she calculated. Every smile she offered was measured, every word chosen with intent. Even the smallest gestures could shift loyalties, and she learned to wield power quietly, without drawing unnecessary attention to herself. Yet despite her careful measures, the court was a place of danger. Stories of sudden deaths and mysterious poisons were whispered with a mixture of fear and fascination. Catherine herself became the subject of such stories, though many were exaggerated or entirely false. Rumors painted her as a master of subtle murder, a queen who could remove rivals with a flick of her hand. In truth, she was a woman navigating a perilous world, often forced to make morally complex choices to protect her family and maintain the fragile balance of power. Her children were both a source of joy and a reminder of the stakes she faced. She watched them grow into their roles with a mixture of pride and apprehension, aware that each decision she made could secure or endanger their future. Catherine's love for her children was fierce, and she was relentless in her efforts to protect them from the dangers of court life, whether from political rivals or the religious conflicts tearing the kingdom apart. Her devotion often required sacrifices, both personal and moral, yet she remained unwavering in her determination to see her family thrive. The most defining moments of her reign came during the height of religious conflict. Catherine sought to maintain peace through diplomacy and careful negotiation, arranging marriages, forging temporary truces, and attempting to mediate between opposing factions. Yet the tensions were immense, and violence erupted despite her best efforts. She faced criticism from all sides, some accusing her of favoritism, others blaming her for unrest, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon her. In the face of this adversity, Catherine's resolve hardened. She learned that leadership required not only wisdom and strategy but also resilience, the ability to endure insults, betrayals, and setbacks without losing focus. Catherine's reputation as the Poison Queen grew, fueled by rumors and political enemies. Tales of clandestine schemes, secret poisons, and whispered plots spread through the court, blending fact and fiction. Yet behind these stories was a woman striving to protect her children and her throne in a world where threats were constant and loyalty was fragile. She used every tool at her disposal, charm, negotiation, intelligence, to secure her family's position, even as history would remember her with suspicion and awe. Through triumphs and tragedies, Catherine's life was defined by a delicate balance between love and duty, ambition and survival. She faced betrayals that cut deeply, victories that brought fleeting relief, and losses that left scars lasting a lifetime. Yet in every challenge, she demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt, endure, and strategize. Her story is not one of cruelty alone, but of a woman navigating impossible circumstances, making difficult choices, and leaving a legacy that continues to fascinate centuries later. In the end, Catherine de' Medici's life was a testament to resilience, intelligence, and the human capacity to navigate complexity. She reminds us that history is shaped not only by kings and battles but by the subtle influence of those who wield power with wisdom, patience, and determination. Her story inspires reflection on the delicate balance between morality and necessity, the weight of responsibility, and the enduring impact of choices made in the crucible of history. By the time Catherine reached her middle years, France was a kingdom on the brink. The Huguenot uprisings had become more than isolated incidents, they were a reflection of the deep fractures in society. Cities had fallen into chaos, and the crown struggled to maintain control. Catherine, now a seasoned queen and mother, understood that diplomacy alone could not preserve the delicate balance. Every decision had consequences that stretched far beyond her own household. Her children, now growing into young adults, were not only her pride but also her political instruments. Marriages she arranged were strategic moves designed to secure alliances, strengthen claims, and quell dissent. Yet with each negotiation, Catherine faced resistance, from stubborn nobles, jealous rivals, and factions that sought to manipulate her children for their own gain. Her role as a mother and a ruler were constantly intertwined, a web of responsibility where a single misstep could invite disaster. The court was rife with tension. Every gathering, every feast, and every council meeting carried the potential for betrayal. Catherine's keen observation and careful planning became her shield. She learned to anticipate threats, reading not only the words of those around her but also the silences, the gestures, the fleeting glances. It was a dangerous dance of perception and action, where trust was earned sparingly and caution was a constant companion. Amid these challenges, Catherine's reputation as the Poison Queen solidified. Tales of mysterious deaths, secret plots, and clever manipulation swirled around her like a shadow. Some were undoubtedly exaggerations, while others reflected the extreme measures she sometimes took to protect her family. She was a master of political strategy, using subtlety and discretion to maintain control without drawing direct confrontation. In a world where open rebellion could mean ruin, such tactics were often the difference between survival and disaster. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, one of the darkest and most infamous episodes associated with her name, was not a decision she took lightly. Religious violence had escalated, and Catherine, fearing for her children and the stability of the crown, found herself navigating an impossible moral landscape. The massacre, though devastating, was a reflection of the perilous circumstances of the time, a reminder of how fear, politics, and survival intertwined. It marked her as a figure both vilified and feared, yet it also underscored the extreme pressures placed upon her as a mother, queen, and strategist. Even as she contended with these tragedies, Catherine displayed remarkable resilience. She continued to nurture her children, guide their marriages, and assert her influence over the kingdom's affairs. She knew that the legacy of her family, and the future of France itself, depended on her ability to navigate the storms that raged around her. Her intelligence, foresight, and determination were her greatest weapons, and she wielded them with precision and care. Catherine's personal life was equally complex. Her marriage to Henry had evolved into a partnership shaped by necessity, political ambition, and occasional tenderness. She experienced the joys and sorrows of motherhood, the weight of unfulfilled personal desires, and the loneliness that often accompanies power. Yet these human emotions did not weaken her resolve, they strengthened it, giving her a depth of understanding that informed every decision she made. Throughout these turbulent years, Catherine maintained a delicate balance between action and reflection. She observed the ebb and flow of power, the fleeting nature of loyalty, and the intricate interplay of fear, respect, and love. Each day was a lesson in patience, each interaction a chance to influence the course of events subtly yet decisively. Her life was a continuous exercise in strategy, intuition, and endurance, a testament to the demands placed upon a ruler in a fractured world. By the end of her middle years, Catherine de' Medici had become more than a queen, she was a symbol of endurance, cunning, and maternal devotion. History would remember her as a figure of controversy and intrigue, yet beneath the layers of rumor and accusation lay a woman navigating extraordinary circumstances with remarkable skill. She was a strategist, a protector, and a mother, all roles intertwined in a life defined by the relentless pursuit of stability and security for her family and her kingdom. The years had passed, and Catherine de' Medici, once a wide-eyed Italian girl stepping into the grandeur of the French court, was now a woman who carried the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders. Her hair, once dark and glossy, was streaked with gray, her youthful features were lined with experience and sorrow. Yet her eyes, sharp and calculating, still held the spark of intelligence and determination that had guided her through decades of political turmoil, religious strife, and personal loss. Catherine spent her days observing, advising, and, when necessary, acting. She had survived betrayals, rebellions, and the relentless judgments of history. The court had changed, new faces and new factions rising to replace those who had fallen, yet Catherine's influence remained undeniable. She had learned to wield her power quietly, shaping events from behind the scenes, guiding her children, and maintaining a delicate balance in a kingdom that still teetered on the edge of chaos. Her reflections often turned inward, considering the decisions that had defined her life. Some choices had brought pain, others had brought fleeting victories. She remembered the whispers of poison, the rumors that painted her as cruel, and the fear that had sometimes dictated her actions. But beneath the scandal, beneath the fear, lay a consistent truth: Catherine had acted to protect her children, her family, and the crown. In a world that demanded ruthlessness, she had navigated the impossible, balancing morality with necessity, strategy with survival. Catherine's children had grown into their roles, though not without trials. Kings and queens in their own right, they bore the marks of their upbringing, educated in the art of diplomacy, cautious of enemies, and aware of the precariousness of power. Catherine's guidance had been a constant, shaping their decisions and, indirectly, the course of the nation. Her influence lingered in their choices, their alliances, and their understanding of the delicate interplay between authority and responsibility. Yet despite her political acumen, Catherine never lost her humanity. She grieved for the losses she could not prevent, mourned for those who suffered under the weight of the religious wars, and cherished the quiet moments with her children and grandchildren. She understood that power was fleeting, but the love and care she invested in her family endured, leaving an imprint that would last far beyond her reign. Catherine de' Medici's story reminds us that even in a world of danger, betrayal, and scandal, a single person's courage, intelligence, and determination can shape history. She was a mother, a queen, and a strategist, human in every way, yet extraordinary in her choices. Her life teaches us that strength is not always loud, but it leaves a mark that endures through the centuries. Catherine de' Medici's story reminds us that even in a world of danger, betrayal, and scandal, a single person's courage, intelligence, and determination can shape history. She was a mother, a queen, and a strategist, human in every way, yet extraordinary in her choices. Her life teaches us that strength is not always loud, but it leaves a mark that endures through the centuries.